hours later.
8 hours later. We took a minute to set this up. We're getting better at it. We are. We're getting better at it. We're slowly progressing. Just allow 2 hours for setup each time.
Yeah, shit. Not 30 minutes.
Would you like to do one of these today?
Sure, let's do it. We can start that way.
Dave, if I slip a nip, just let me know. Just tell me to.
Alright. Pineapples are a safe word.
I won't forget that. Oops.
I feel like it's not a very safe word.
It's only unsafe if it's upside down.
Yeah, oh, okay. That's what it is. All right. So is this question for me or for you? Or
This
for
is
both of
this
us?
is for both of us.
For both of us. Okay. What do you do to stoke your creative fire?
That's a good one.
That's a good one. Yeah, that's a good pick.
Good job.
Thanks.
Do you want to go first or should I?
I asked the question. So.
Okay. I'm just recently, just in the past week, really reminded of what I do to stoke my creative fire. I just left a period of pretty intense burnout, and it ended with me getting really sick for like 9 days, and I'm like still kind of congested from it.
Sure.
But since then, I was forced to rest, and now I was given the opportunity to do a hard reset. And I started something called the Artist's Way on Monday. And essentially, there's a lot of different things. It's a 12-week program, kind of like 75 Hard, but for creatives, and really pushing yourself creatively, finding your creativity again. And a big part of it is something called morning pages, where every morning you wake up, the first thing you do is you write 3 pages. Stream of consciousness. Okay. You know, just write. A lot of people can't write for that long.
Yeah. I don't think I could.
It really forces you to be like, all right, well, where can I, pull a story from, or what dream did I have last night? So I've been recounting those things, and it's been a really easy first win of the day to get my creative brain flowing, get the gunk out of the brain, from either your dreams or the negativity, and then get your creativity flowing. So that, and then meditation and walks have been huge for me, as far as really getting me stoked about creating.
Yeah, I like that's an interesting concept to be writing every day. I think there's a lot that can come out of that. It would be, and like when you're writing, is it like you're writing by hand, or is it typing like 3 pages on a computer?
By hand in a journal.
By hand in a journal.
Yeah.
Cool. Okay.
Yeah.
Nice. Double space, single.
I can show you what it looks like. That's what it looks like.
Nice.
So.
Okay.
About like that last night, or today I wrote about Miyazaki, who's the director, the anime director, and a specific concept that he leans into in his not his documentaries, but his films, called Ma, which is essentially the space. It allows space. So rather than like most American films are like go, 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 he puts those really cinematic animations that it's just like a minute of just like walking. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's a very Eastern concept, but Americans are used to just this go, 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 go. So
for sure,
I was inspired by that. So I wrote three pages about how it impacted my creative flow.
Okay. That was this morning, you said?
Yeah.
Nice.
Well, it was technically this afternoon. But
this afternoon.
Yeah.
Okay.
I slept in this morning.
Okay. Good. Very good. What do I do to stoke my creative fire?
Is that a stressful question for you?
I don't know if it's a stressful question. I just was thinking, like, I don't know what necessarily I do for like creativity, because I think a lot of the stuff, I wouldn't say is structured, but it's like I wouldn't necessarily consider it creative that I do with like my day to day. So like this has been a way to like stoke creative fire, and like being able to create something, I think, that I have a little bit more say over, like how it goes. Not that I have to control every component of it, but it's like more that I have say over whether or not it happens a bit easier. So this has been a way for me to stoke my creative fire. So that's been I'd say my recent way to do that. Otherwise, definitely I like to what I was doing for a while that really helped was going on walks. There's a park up on the ridge overlooking like the city of Austin, and it's called Wild Basin. And when I first moved here, I would go and walk through there pretty much every morning, or about 5 days a week when I was in town. And it was just like a way to recognize something that I hadn't recognized on a walk before. And so I've been entering that into my life recently, just the idea of like going on a walk somewhere and noticing something that I hadn't noticed before. So you're like more present and aware of what's going on.
Absolutely.
So I think those are the two ways that I do it.
On the first way, what do you think it is about this series that is sparking that creativity?
It's, again, for me, there's a lot of the people that I work with, I think, are starting in a similar place where they're not able, like they haven't been able to do this their whole life. And I have. So that's been an interesting way to like remind myself about like teaching things. And there's going to be, points that are like, oh yeah, this is something that I haven't thought about in a while. So that's been a way to revisit, I guess, those like thought processes and look at them again in a new light, basically. And then it's also been the okay, how do we like make it look cool, and how do we like show the difference in driving between like a novice and a professional, and like what does that process look like? How do you take someone from like not knowing anything to knowing something?
Yeah.
And what are the pieces that get there? Also like being creative as to like how can we, like at some point it's going to be like I can't really fund beyond like a certain level, so how do we create the ability to fund it beyond what we can put in ourselves?
Yeah.
So those are all the things that's like getting me thinking about, stuff that we can be doing.
It's giving your imagination an opportunity to see what it can come up with.
Yeah.
Like you've been directing to a certain degree, coming up with like, here's what we're going to do in the coaching. I mean, what is a coach if not a director, right? To a certain degree.
Sure. Yeah.
You're directing someone on what to do. And so you're getting the opportunity to be like, all right, we're going to do this, and this, and we're going to focus on this thing. And then, how can we make that interesting to somebody that either hasn't done racing before or is right where I am, or is, just entering. And so I think that's for sure. Like you're able to, like you said, you're able to create something that doesn't exist, that you have a say over exactly where it goes.
Yeah.
Which is not always the case for pretty much all people.
Yeah, totally. And I think the consistency with it also is like a good creative thing. I feel like putting some structure around, like we've had the discussion of how often, things should be happening. And I feel like, a good thing to revisit here later in the discussion is like how well we've hit those targets. And I feel like there's a bit of like creativity that comes from structure, because you've got like your 3 pages a day and you're like, okay, well, I have to fill these 3 pages. And so like it starts to push you through that, maybe like call it writer's block or whatever it is. And so there's like, you're forcing yourself to be creative. And so it's a similar thing where it's like, okay, well, I'm, if we have, set out the 4 basically, call it 12 track days next year or more, that are set out for like improvement, that'll give us, like, okay, well, there's 12 different shoots that we're doing. And so how do we be creative about making them bigger and better, or not better, but like more efficient, and all those pieces that make it more interesting and get more just out of the whole experience. Yeah.
Creative discipline, kind of an oxymoron, but that's exactly what you need in order to continue upwelling that new creativity, is like showing up every single day, even whenever you have writer's block and all of that. So
yeah, exactly. Yeah.
We could go into this for a long time.
I think so. Yeah, I think so. Well, yeah, I think a good segue here to move into that next piece. And so we went to the track again. We had one sim session in between the first track day and then the second track day. We got some new gear for you and we got you out in the cart. And I think going a bit more, maybe not consistent, is one of the next steps for you, but we got you going more on the limit of the cart, which was better. And the grip level and everything, the day was a bit lower. So I think the day was probably slower overall, the track. So good improvement. We'll go into like lap times a little bit later, but first I think should take a look at like gear and what was different, maybe feeling wise. Cause you mentioned a couple of things. It was like, okay, I feel like I'm like, now I feel more protected, or I feel that I'm better in the cart, or any of those things. So I don't know if you want to, we can go through like just whatever comes to mind with that.
Yeah. So on the first track day, to give reference, I
think they're over there.
What?
Your pants.
Oh yeah. On the first track day, I had my old motocross pants on, which gave me some sort of protection, but like bright blue. That was my taste whenever I was probably like, I think I was 16 or 17 years old whenever I got these, but they gave me some sort of like feeling of protection whenever I was in the cart.
Sure.
Alec told me before, and this is something that I've learned, but like the main difference between an actual like car racing suit and a karting racing suit is that a karting racing suit is meant for abrasion protection and a car is meant for fire proofing and fire protection. So
yep.
Like if you come out of the cart, it's not going to feel great sliding down the asphalt. You want to be protected. And so that gave me some sort of protection. But other than that, I had nothing in a helmet.
Yeah. Helmet,
obviously I had a helmet, but other than that, I had pretty much nothing that was meant for karting. I had a pair of Nike skate shoes on.
Yep.
And it was a much different day. The second track day where I had really like the right shoes, with a really, really thin bottom. I'm pretty sure that's like the main difference, right?
Yeah, main difference. And then like the little on the heel, the heel pivots a bit nicer rather than it's a little rounded edge. But that's the big thing.
Yeah. So like,
and it's like just smaller,
These are the shoes that I wore the first time.
Yeah.
And these are the shoes that I wore the second time.
You had your high top Vans on first time.
Did I?
Yeah. All black high top Vans.
Similar then. Similar. But did I really?
Yeah.
I'm sure we could pull the video up and see.
Yeah. Pull it up. And then I also had my suit. So actually, we're just going to start with top to bottom. I had gloves.
Yeah, you had gloves the first time, but they were my car gloves.
Yeah. So what's the difference between those?
Same thing. Abrasion resistant versus fireproof or fire retardant.
So we have these nice Sparco gloves. Abrasion versus fire. And then I didn't actually use the rib vest this time, but the rib vest is a new piece of gear because after the first day on the track, I left with bruises on my ribs.
Oh, you did?
It wasn't physical. It wasn't visible.
Yeah.
Like it wasn't like I had black and blue ribs, but it wasn't just soreness to the muscle. It was soreness to like the touch.
For sure.
And so I was taking, however many G's that is, and never done it before, and had zero expectation of actually feeling sore in that way.
Sure.
You've told me about rib vests before, but I was like, I probably won't need one of those.
Yeah.
Like definitely,
Definitely want it.
Felt it less this time, even with not using the rib vest. But this is something that allows us to keep going, sustainability wise, I'm sure. So this is what a rib vest looks like. And I'll throw that on under my suit.
Yep.
And then we'll show you what the suit looks like in this little cutaway scene of me putting it on and walking around in it, but essentially a black and red and white suit. So that's great.
Yep.
That's pretty much all the gear, right?
Yeah.
But the gear made a huge difference.
Okay. How so?
Specifically in the feeling of, or in the way of feeling protected.
Okay.
I think. And then also like, you put on the right stuff, you look good, you feel good,
Yeah, I guess.
And like definitely a certain level of excitement. Like once you've put on the gear, it's like, all right, I'm not showing up as just like a first time rookie. This time I want to like actually feel like I'm doing I know what I'm doing.
Sure.
And so I think it definitely helped with that level of confidence. Like if I do come out of this cart, even though like the likelihood of that happening is so small, like I'll slide down the concrete and be completely fine. Versus that first day was just a t-shirt. So, that, and then just like the shoes were I think the biggest, really.
Sure.
Where it was like, I could really feel it all. I had more space, for my legs to relax too, versus like the thicker sole on the bottom of a pair of Nikes.
Sure. Vans.
Whatever they were, I know that the high tops are Nikes, so they were at least Nikes. This is not sponsored by Nike though. The black ones. Oh, you're talking about that. They were Vans.
Yeah.
Oops. Not sponsored by Nike or Vans though.
No.
And,
or Sparko.
now I remember the black ones, and those just aren't super comfortable anyway.
Yeah.
Does that touch on the points? The first
yeah,
points
I think so. For me, it's a lot of times about for me, it's about the safety, right? And so having the right stuff, helps protect you both from, any sort of small thing, like a rock, can fly up and hit your arm and that hurts, or can cut you, or like stuff like that. So just like those things will, kind of get taken away by the right gear. So it was good that we had all that. I think the other piece of gear that we're looking at now is like the Micron and all the stuff on the cart. So the next piece that we need to get, speaking to Joe's, why he couldn't use the rib vest, is because the seat's a little bit too small. And so that's like the seat that's meant for me. And what we'll do probably the next time is mount. So we'll probably have to do, some time in the evening, maybe one of the nights before we go up there, to change the seat out. We got to like go through, drill holes and do all the mounting and everything, but it also fit better for like your like legs and all that stuff. So that'll be good to do up at the track the next time we go out, and will allow you to actually use that. And so it should make like easier. I think we did about 30 laps the first day. I think you did about 50 laps this time. Yeah. I think when I was karting growing up as a kid, we typically would do anywhere between like 15 and 100 laps. It was like usually the amount that I do in a day, just as like the training. So again, with karting, the nice thing is that you can do lap after lap after lap, and like really hone in on like those skills that you're working on understanding. And with a kart, it's that limited grip. And so the sliding and everything that we talked about, at the track the last 2 days.
Yeah. Amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's like what you said, is the consistency, right? Like there's some really good laps in here that I mean, you can hear me like in the helmet, like, whoa, like I know when that was a good turn.
Sure.
And then I'll come around the next time and it'll be like, that wasn't quite as good. So you won't hear me, make that sound.
Yeah. Sure.
But it's like those good turns and then consistently getting those, like, lap after lap after lap.
So speaking to that, like, what's the difference when you're in the, like, say you what's the difference between a good turn and a bad turn for you?
For me, what I'm noticing, so far is getting down to the apex properly.
Okay.
And then using all the track on the way out.
Yeah.
Like that's the biggest determinant of like me in the go-kart in the moment being like, that was a good turn or that was a bad turn. Okay. And then like also starting to notice the RPMs, but the RPMs are being affected by me not using the track out.
Sure.
And so just taking too hard of a turn, and then it grabs and then it bogs.
Yeah.
And that's something that, I can notice
totally
between like the first day in the kart and the second day.
And then mentally, what's the difference between getting to the apex and not getting to the apex?
I would say timing on the way in. I mentioned it on the track day where it was kind of like a realization that I had where you think you're turning into the apex, but really it's a much more complicated endeavor to get down to the apex. Sure. That's where the consistency plays, where you're doing... I was explaining this to my buddy on the phone yesterday, like, and it, made sense to me. And then I'm like, that was a minute-long explanation, which I'm sure sounds like total layman's terms for something like this. But essentially using the brake and the steering wheel to get the cart to slide to a certain degree at the right point so that whenever you are coming around the turn, you're sliding. So it's really just dialing in what happens in the preparation of the turn with the brake zone and the point of turn into it to get to the apex correctly. For me, at least that's what I'm picking up on.
Yep. And so to sum that up, it's kind of the breaking point and the turn in point. You know, those are the two things that you're having to like really dial in on to get to the apex. Right. Yeah.
And I think specifically for me as well, I'm hitting either a really deep turn to where I'm probably like, you know, 3 to 4 feet off the apex. Like I think that first major turn after the long straightaway. Is where have like probably the most variability. Like sometimes it's really good, sometimes it's not, because the turn-in point feels like if I turn in right now, I'm going to go into the grass.
Okay.
At least that's what my brain's telling me, right? So wait a little bit longer, and you know, waiting a little bit longer is a 1/10 or a quarter of a second. Whenever it comes to, you know, something like this.
Thinking about that, I mean, most people have taken like some sort of defensive driving course, and one of the things that they talk about in that is at like 60 mile an hour, you're covering a football field a second, basically. Something along those lines, right? Is that
fact check it? But
fact check it.
We'll
60,
work with it.
60 miles an hour. You want to check that? How far do you go in a second when you're doing 60 miles?
That sounds about right.
Yeah,
because I remember that.
It's a mile a minute. You know, the 5,280 feet divided by 60 seconds.
I choose not to do math most times.
The car traveling at 60 miles per hour travels 88 feet per second.
So 88. So not quite.
So 3 football fields, or 3 seconds.
3 seconds is a football field. Yeah. Okay.
Just about. And that's like,
so you're doing a little less than 100 feet a second.
In defensive driving, they were like, if you look down at your phone, you know, and read that text message, which takes like on average like 3 seconds, then you travel to a football field and you haven't looked up. That's what I remember.
Okay. Yeah, that's what I'm thinking about too.
Field a second, like,
or it's like at 60 mile an hour, it takes a football field to stop to zero. I feel like that's the other thing. Anyways, where I'm going with this is, if you're thinking about like, okay, so at 60 mile an hour, you're doing 88 feet per second. So a half second is, 40 feet basically. And so just that like half second hesitation that you might have, you've already, so when you're thinking about tenths of a second, that's where like those 2 or 3 feet at the apex are coming from, because you're doing about 55 going into that 50 to 55 mile an hour at that track going into the turn 2, that first tight hairpin. Mm-hmm. And so like just at the top end, if you're like, I don't know, a split second, like 1/10 of a second, 2/10 of a second, that's like 10 to 20 feet that you're like essentially traveling further when you're coming down to the apex. You have to like adjust for all of that.
Right.
So it's a lot of like, the timing gets to be like a very important thing. And so what I find with people when like you're not able to consistently get to the same spot, it's a lot about getting your eyes to where you want to be on the track. And so focusing on the breaking point and like dialing into like a specific spot that you're going to consistently break at each time, and then looking for the apex. If you're behind all those pieces, say you're not looking, or you're looking at the breaking point and braking at the same time, then you're going to miss the apex because you're already behind the cart on the track.
Right.
So you got to be like, we talk about like eyes up. So thinking about looking through the turn. So like when you're at the breaking point, you should already be at the like eyes at the apex. When you're at the apex, the eyes should already be at the exit. So you're always like mentally ahead of the car.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was running on the trail today, and it was like a little bit of a relation to that,
Sure.
Like whenever you're trail running, you're not looking exactly where your foot is, because otherwise you're going to trip on the next step.
Yeah.
So like looking
you have to
steps ahead.
Up and down at the same.
Yeah.
Yeah. Exactly. One of the things that I have listened to on a podcast recently was in sim training with pro drivers. You can do like eye trackers, And so like you can see where the eyes are going and everything. And so with pro drivers, their eyes are very focused on like specific points on the turn, and amateur drivers their eyes are more across the board. So see these, like the scatter plot where the pro drivers' eyes are here, there, and there, and then amateur drivers are like all over the place.
Interesting.
And so like the mental like focus and the placement of your eyes is like one of the most important pieces of the driving aspect. And so if you can be mentally ahead, that's where the cart is again very helpful, because everything's coming so quickly at you. When you go to a car and you shift that reference point up, things feel like they're coming a lot slower.
Also, I'd like to add that is a muscle.
Yeah.
Like that is a muscle that you can exhaust. And that's what I felt really the first day was there was so much to process.
Yeah.
At that speed, that low to the ground, ground speed, the feeling. And I was exhausted after like 15 laps.
Yeah.
I was sweating. I was tired. My head was, weak. My neck was weak. And, to constantly focus from point to point to point to point, like that is something that you have to dial in over time, just like you would, the ability to run a marathon. Yeah.
It's definitely a muscle, and you can work it out in exercises too. So like one of the ways to train is with, like, say you're on a stationary bike or something, doing like mental cognition while you're doing exercise. So you can train your brain to be like processing different information while you're being like while you're physically exerting yourself.
So like doing Sudoku on the stationary bike?
Yeah, Sudoku, or just like simple like math equations is one of the ways to do it. What I've been doing recently is language studying. So it's like processing like the memory side of the brain. So I'll do this in the workouts instead of like in between sets scrolling on like social media. If I'm scrolling on something, I'll switch to like a memory, like language learning app. So that's been one of my tools recently. The other thing is like the Blaze pods. I'm sure you've seen those, where it's like the light pops up and you touch it. That's another way that you can train that sort of like mental agility and mental like focus, because you're scanning the environment for the things that you're looking for and then picking up quickly and reacting quickly.
One thing that I found myself doing for the first time, never done this before, but on my walk today, was as I was walking, I was like, what if I just held my hand? This is weird. I was like, what if I just held my hands like this and I picked out a leaf, on the corner. And then as I walk past, I just have to like grab the leaf real quick. And it's like, I'm walking, so I'm in zone 2 cardio, but I'm just like trying to reach out and grab that leaf as quickly as possible. And, I missed a ton. Yeah. I slowly got better.
Sure.
And so I was like doing something that's activating my brain and my quick reflexes at the same time as doing, some sort of exercise, which, I don't know why my brain decided to do that for the first time ever today, but, maybe it has something to do with this.
It could. Yeah, it could. It's like wanting that
quick stimulation or something.
And then speaking to the like physicality, there was a point we like way after, so we'd like cleaned everything up and we were going back to drop you off, and you're like, it's like that end of the ski day feeling where you're like, oh, okay, now I'm tired, like no more lifts, there's nothing else to do, and so like energy levels from here down to here.
Yeah. And
I think you pulled your phone out and you looked at the Whoop and you're like, what, a 15 strain, like what?
Yeah, let me actually pull those statistics up.
You're like, how did I hit that?
Because I really love, what I've been tracking my Whoop information. Thanks, Whoop, for I don't know,
since 3 years.
Yeah, since August or September of 2020.
Yeah.
So yeah, over 3 years.
Sure.
And it's been really cool to see what kind of activities stack up to other activities.
Yeah.
Surfing is one of those really deep flow sports that's like, you wouldn't think it would be as much as swimming, but it's actually more than swimming.
Sure.
Because there's those like really high intense moments where you're like paddling to get the wave.
Yeah.
But that was last Wednesday, right?
Last one, 2 Wednesdays ago?
Wednesday. Yeah. So all I did that day was I woke up at 7:12 a.m., plugged some batteries in, and met you at the track.
Yeah.
I think we met there around like 8:10.
You got there at 8:30 or so.
Oh yeah. Because that was the time. 8:30 something.
The time was 8.
You said 8 to 8:30, but we'll get into that later. You said between 8 and 8:30. All my strain for that day, I think I went on like a quick, small walk with my dog whenever I got back to my partner's house, and I got a 15.5 strain, which is out of 21.
Yeah.
That's generally pretty high for a workout day, and I burned 3,100 calories that day.
Yeah, when we were driving home in the truck, you said, "Oh, I burned 2,500 calories already."
Yeah, and that was like at 3, like 2.
I dropped you off at 4, right at 4 o'clock.
And we spent like probably close to an hour, before then, like not doing anything.
Sure.
So it was 50 laps, and
right around there.
It got my strain up that high, and so things like that really put things into perspective
for sure
about how activity. How intense this is as a sport.
Yeah, and there's a combination of that mental muscle that you were describing and the physicality with the just like the G load, because you're working a lot of muscles that you aren't used to normally working, right? So with like it's like the stabilization with your core and the neck muscles, and then it's also like the mental processing. So it's all those pieces that kind of come together in the like that, all those pieces that come together to make it kind of challenging, more challenging than what people would anticipate.
Yeah, and specifically one thing that I was able to notice on track day 2 versus track day 1 was my breathing. And I noticed that I was like
holding your breath,
just hold my breath. Yeah, and then like on the straightaways, it'd be like, okay, like. I mean, you're taking a lot, going through that. What's that tight, like kind of like a chicane right before the first hairpin, where it's like, you're gonna hit that. What do you call it? The curb. Yeah, the apex and it's gonna pop you up. Like going into that, like I'm very focused on. I need to get my breaths in. Right now. Sure. Because going around those corners, I don't know what I'm doing because I'm focused on the break point, the apex, getting out of the corner, track out. I don't know what my breathing is like, but going into it, I was able to like think about, all right, I need to, be controlled with my breath rather than being erratic. And so that was really interesting. Yeah.
I think that's, there's tracks, it's like similar to having a heavy lift in the gym, right? Like you breathe in when you're doing the lift, and then you exhale when you're done. So like when you're going through a corner, you kind of like hold the breath, brace, and then exhale when you're out of the corner. So it's, I don't think it's as like conscious, like your body just naturally does it because it's like holding itself up. And like, if you're breathing while you're doing that, you can't like brace yourself consistent. Quite as well. Right. So it's like that aspect. There's tracks that you'll go to where there's no real good breaks, and you have to basically remind yourself to like breathe.
I actually really like that reminder that it's like weightlifting, because most people would think like, no, like breathe consistently, but you are supporting a lot of force with your diaphragm. I mean, that's arguably where you're holding the most force, right? Because like your butt's in the seat.
It's like, the core,
like that, if you don't hold it there, it's just gonna, slouch completely out of the cart. So that's a good point.
Yeah. I've got a question.
Sure.
So relaying it back to sim a little bit, when you say there are those tracks that are kind of hard to pick the points to breathe in, when you're practicing and learning that track on the sim, do you like consciously practice your breathing and notice like this is a good point for me to catch my breath, catch my mental?
So the question about when you're on the sim, do you do the same thing and like mentally practice or think about like the places on the track that you would breathe or have the opportunity to breathe? I haven't been as like cognizant of doing that. That's probably like, it's a good idea, I think, but I guess it's more, I haven't been as much of aware of it. Like there's still that, it's interesting because like you get on the sim and you start driving, you still get that same sort of like mental, like taxing load, but you don't have the same sort of physical tax on your body. So it's not been quite as, I'd say it hasn't been quite as intentional. The time where it is on the sim though, is when you are like racing other people, you tend to do the same thing where you get tensed up and you're like, kind of preparing yourself for not fight, but to pass people and stuff. And so with that, there is that same sort of like, oh, okay, I need to remind myself to like breathe and stay calm. Because like when you get when you hold your breath and kind of like tense up, like the body gets more, it's tensed up and it's like a little bit more, I wouldn't say anxiety, but more like stress is
more
building.
Sympathetic nervous system.
Yeah. And so like you got to remind yourself to like be like in a state of flow and calm and just being able to react to anything that's happening.
I wouldn't be surprised. That's a great question also, Davis. I wouldn't be surprised if it's a matter of muscle memory than if it's more of a matter of muscle memory than it is a matter of conscious choice, where if you're going around a corner in, the sim or in the cart or in the car, your arms are extended, which is directly connected to your diaphragm.
Sure.
And so if you were to start breathing, even whenever you're going around the corner in the sim, like that's going to impact to some degree, where your hands are and what's interacting with.
Yeah.
And so I wouldn't be surprised if just naturally your body, at least for someone like you, is probably doing the same sort of like, all right, we're going to breath hold going through this corner and then we'll breathe.
I'm sure it is, and that's why I said like I haven't been very like intentional about it, but I'm sure it happens. The one place where I do like remind myself in ways when I'm going on the sim is during races. If I'm racing other people, it's like, okay, just like the relaxed part of it if you're in a close battle. Yeah.
I like that.
Yeah. So moving forward on what's there was one more piece of the day, I think, where we were talking about how, I don't know, I think we can just jump in unless you have any other points to jump into before the
I think specifically, like I texted you these takeaways and maybe this will touch on them. I'm sure we'll touch on them when we're up here, but
sure.
What I wanted to leave the track thinking about working on was decreasing the latency between throttle and brake.
Sure.
There's a couple tenths of a second there, probably per turn, where I could, pick up some time, and then not steering into the slide, but braking on a couple of these turns. You can see that I'm kind of like jerking it.
Sure.
Versus allowing the subtle turn and the brake to do that.
Yeah. So the way that we'll describe those two things is not coasting into the brake zones. So essentially what you're doing now is full throttle, lift, coast, brake. And what we're looking for is full throttle, brake. So there's a little bit of coasting that can, in karts, it's not as much, but in cars, there's a little bit of coasting that can be done from the release of the brake to the apex. Same thing in go-karts. You can do a little bit of like rolling speed, essentially, from the release of the brake to the apex of the corner, but you want to be full throttle all the way to the point of braking. So full throttle, braking point, brake. There's no like transition. If there's like exceptions to that, but as a general rule, you want to be full throttle up until the braking point. That's I see that in a lot of the people that I work with in cars, and it's very easy to see that in the car. In the karts, you can hear it. You can hear when people are doing it because it's not as clean of a transition. But in the cars, you see the data where people are like kind of lifting. So the throttle trace would be like up, say like up at 100%, and then it kind of drops off, and then the brake pressure will then. So what we want to see is like as the throttle drops off, the brake pressure is increasing essentially at the same time. So that's pretty much what we're going for in the karts. The second piece of that is you're essentially like upsetting the cart into a slide with your hands. Yeah. And we just want to see that naturally happen and using the brake to rotate the cart, not the hands. So if you think about the difference between the two, like physically what's happening, if you're using the hands to do that in the cart, the weight transfer is immediate, so it's not as crucial. But if you use the hands to do it, you're essentially like pointing the cart away from the turn and then getting it to slide. Whereas if you're then you're taking away some force from the brake.
Which is one of the reasons I'm hesitating to be close to the actual outside at the beginning of the turn, because I don't want to throw myself into it.
You're upsetting the cart, and so what you're doing is you almost like kind of like normally what happens is people turn out and then in a little bit, to kind of like initiate a slide. That's typically how we would do it in like an off-road setting or something like that, which is different, completely different environment. But in like the circuit driving, you want the brake to create that rotation, because what happens as you start to turn in and you're braking, the traction on the rear tire breaks and it starts to slide to the outside from like the centripetal force, essentially. So that's just essentially saying like object in motion wants to stay in motion. And so what's happening is you're creating the slide this way rather than going this. And so it's a more natural feel and more controlled. Yeah.
Great. And what I will say as well, as we move into this, the track conditions and the weather conditions were different on this day. I think it was probably like 20 degrees colder.
Yeah, definitely colder.
And so the limit of grip, I don't know what the
that's a good
coefficient is, but there was less grip on the track. Yeah. Which was helpful.
Sure.
Because I was able to actually experiment with that limited grip at a much lower speed.
Totally.
To really get the feel for it.
Totally. And one of the things that I like working with people in like early on is driving in low grip conditions. So the technical term is low mu. That's like coefficient of friction. The other way to do that is with rain. Or ice driving schools. So those are all, or drifting. So yeah, those are all ways, and it helps with car control. So you understand like when the car is at its limit. So like what you're saying, you trust both, you understand where the limit's at and you can feel what it feels like when it's sliding, and you trust that you can control the cart when it's doing that. Yeah. So it was nice that happened. The other thing with it is, especially the tire is the most affected piece when temperature changes happen. And so generally say it takes a lap for a tire to come in to its like optimum range in normal conditions from like 70 degrees and higher. When you start decreasing, 60s, 50s, 40s, it takes, more time. And so you can build that same grip, but it just takes longer. And so you have to trust that it's going to be there eventually.
Yeah. And we experienced that firsthand whenever Alec stopped me quickly on the track, gave me like a 3 to 5 minute conversation. Yeah. And then I immediately spun out after that because I'd forgotten that the tires would cool down in that amount of time, and just like spun out into the corner. So
yeah, immediately. But yeah, so you'll see, we'll see on the video, I think there's a lot of sliding, a lot. And a lot of times, like sliding isn't always the thing that you want to be doing. We've talked about that before. We talked about it in the last one. But in some cases, like when grip level is really low, it's just what you have to do to get the cart to behave. Mm-hmm. But it's also nice because when you can drive in slick and grippy condition or not low grip conditions, it's easier. I say it's easier to transition to like higher grip than it is to go from higher grip to lower grip, because you understand what it's like at the limit. You're not so worried about it when it's going to slide, and you know how to gain it back. Also, a lot of times it's more difficult to get a cart to or a vehicle to like rotate, and so most of the time they have understeer. So setup wise, when we're talking about like race cars, typically like a more edgy car is quicker over like a 1 lap run, and most cars tend to decrease grip in the rear over a longer stint, because that's where most of the load's going, because you're cornering and putting power down through the rear wheels. So they generally burn up the tire more quickly than the front. So typically cars, like if you can handle a loose or a sliding cart, it's just better for like overall, like the long term.
Yeah. For like the ability to actually control it.
Exactly. To actually control it and to essentially drive anything. If you can drive something that isn't very grippy, it's easier to drive it when it gets more grippy.
Yeah. And moving into this as well, it was nice because with that low grip, as heat built up, then I could increase my speed, but that limit of grip was almost, maybe it was just this temperature, but essentially like as I increased my speed and the tires heated up, I was able to still experiment, at increasing levels. So like going really slow, I didn't have to like work really hard to get it to slide out. And so I was able to experiment with that click we were talking about, which was really, you know, what we're looking for in this series is like, as we move from vehicle to vehicle and condition to condition, what does that like quote unquote click feel like whenever it goes from this is completely foreign to not like I get it and that I 100% know exactly what to do, but I know what I need to chase.
Yeah.
And like that happened on this day for me.
Yeah. And that's always the most challenging part is like on the coaching side is it's about the feeling, right? So I'm trying to describe to you what the feeling should be, and you're trying to go out and feel that. And so the kind of the meeting point of those two like ideas is essentially where the coach, you know, good coach is, because like it's easy to just go say I'll just go do it, but the part of it is like describing what it's like and doing it in a way that like it relates to something that you understand. And so like that's all like what we're doing here is getting you to just understand, okay, what it feels like to be on the limit and what when you're on the limit, what to do with the vehicle.
Right.
So
cool.
Yep. All right. Let's jump into, we have a couple of videos here. So let's start. I wonder if so again, pretty much back to like our normal stuff here. We can throw the headsets on if we want. It's like already you can hear yourself like not going super quick, and you're, like you said, you're already starting to slide. So first thing I'll say here is shift your hands down. I think we talked about this already. I think one of the things that you'd said that it was hard with like where the leg placement is, but still I want your hands just a little bit lower on the steering wheel.
Cool.
So probably like 2 to 3 fingers down. My hands, if we pull it up real quick,
I think they get better whenever I get more grip. Can't, but yours are pretty low.
Yeah, so my hands are normally like at the very bottom of the wheel, basically. Okay. So you can see that. And the reason for that is essentially like leverage on the wheel is better. So your arms, when you're pushing on the steering wheel, you can give better like flex on the chassis with that location, as well as when you're like down kind of on the bottom there, your movements are a little bit smoother normally. So when you're on the top, the hands tend to be a little bit more shaky and kind of like, rather than like nice and controlled. And again, like typically what we're looking for in karts, it's more like a motorcycle where you're like pushing to steer rather than like actually steering. So, and we'll see that in the video comparisons here. So let's go back to So this was the first run. We probably won't watch a ton of this. Let's see.
I see you.
Yeah, okay, cool. So this was like, spun right away, right? Oh no, I stopped you over here. That's what happened. But yeah, already we can see you like being a little bit more aggressive, flirting with like the limit of grip as you're coming into the corner, which is nice. Here, and I think it gets better throughout the day, but you want to be like ultimate right side of the track as you come into the braking zone. So you still got a whole cart width there.
Yeah. You can hear the RPMs.
Yeah. Nice. Same thing here, right?
Right.
I mean, it's not as easy here because of the grip level. Yeah, well, let's skip through all this. Let's see.
There's right.
Wah, wah, wah.
Drop a wheel.
Drop a wheel.
Yeah.
Yeah, so here, I mean, hard to say, but I think you're a little bit behind the cart with your eyes. So if we watch through, let's see, like here. Like your eyes are still here. You know what I mean? And now they're up looking to the exit. It's more evident in like these turns. So you're still looking at the apex here, and you want to be like looking up. You see how like almost immediately at the turn in is when your eyes are shifting. So like you're looking here, and then you're
yeah.
You see that? You're a little bit behind the cart still. Yeah, you see that? You see how your head's sticking on the curb long? So you want to be like following through like here immediately already at that. And same thing like up here, you're getting stuck. Like you're looking at the curb.
That's so cool, you can notice that.
Yeah. Here's not so bad. Yeah, so you're getting, okay, so this was the first run that day. This is the first run that day. So you're getting a little bit better and like exploring the limit of the cart and getting the slides down.
Hey, John.
Yeah, that's... Oh, look at that already. Line looks so good. Still not using the outside of the track there.
Yeah, this is
Second run.
inconsistent
Yeah.
corner or set of turns.
Yeah, your challenge spot there. Too early on the turn in initially there, which put you early on the second one, which then hurt the... You see that? You see what I'm saying there or no?
Yeah. On the last run,
Yeah.
I got it turned consistently. I think this is one of my favorite corners now.
Yeah.
Where you can see the AirPod case on the ground.
Oh yeah.
Where I'm actually moving down the track versus at an angle right here.
And so like what we talked about, and we talked about this. So the first thing that we did the day here was a track walk. Remember? And that's like a great way to get yourself, like I do those at pretty much every track whenever I can, as long as there's time, especially if it's a track I hadn't been to before. But it's one of the things, like you can see little pieces on the track. We found this AirPod on the track walk. That's what reminded me of it. But you want to be with like the right side tires, parallel here. And I think that's something that you saw at the end of the day, like when I started doing some laps.
Like once I saw you come around that corner 5 times, I was like, oh, it's not just late apex.
Right,
it's like being sideways.
Yeah,
like
exactly.
Almost parallel with the track on the way out.
Exactly. Yeah, so you want to be like parallel over here, and then you turn in and allows you to apex over there because you're already getting to the curb
apex right here.
way too early, and then you're having to wait to get back to power.
Hands are still high, yeah.
Hands are still high, yeah. So if you like, we'll see when you look at mine. Like my pinkies are basically down here. So that's I say you don't have to be quite as low as what I am, but like probably 1 to 2 fingers like down a little bit. Oh, that was good. I mean the apex you missed a little bit, but like the power down and the slide through the corner. And you hear how you didn't kill the engine?
Yeah.
Yeah. So that was another big improvement on the day. Yeah. Got to be focused on the track. So this turn, not this one. This one coming up can be full throttle.
This one?
That you just went through.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
That's what I started to notice toward the end of the day. It was like I didn't really need to do.
That was better. Yeah, okay, I think we seen all of this. Yeah, you're starting to understand, like, I think what the cart should feel like. That makes sense.
Yeah.
You know?
It feels so sketchy every time I do it.
Yeah.
I'm like, we're just gonna pop this curb.
Yeah.
Also, we did a ride along,
We did.
which was really helpful.
Did we get a video of that too, or no? I don't think we did.
It would have been. It would be cool to do another one.
Yeah.
And to get some audio.
Yeah, one of the things we didn't do it this time, but I want to do it probably the next time we go out is some.
Following.
Yeah, I want you. It's called lead follow, and so like essentially, like I'll drive in front for a couple laps and then get behind you and follow you, and so like it just gives me a better idea, you know, of what you're doing on the track. But we'll do that with like the maybe.
Reynolds.
Yeah, we'll probably do it with the Reynolds. Yeah. Yeah, everything's looking pretty much the same here. Hands calm down a little bit more here. You see how you're moving your hands up and down though? Just keep them, try and keep them in one spot. Yeah, that's fine.
Early turn.
Yeah, a little bit. I don't know if it's like the way we have the camera mounted, but it just feels like you're
Always looking left.
you're looking down. I think it's just the way that the camera's mounted. All right. So I think after that, we did a reference lap, and then you did another 2 sessions. Or another session. The Micron was out of battery for me, which was fun. Luckily we had transponders, so it was easy. But you see like how that's why I'm not sure if it's a camera placement or what, but like my eyes look like up further down the track, it seems like.
Maybe. Hard to say. Without someone that's consistently placing the GoPros besides ourselves, you know?
Yeah, I'll look at that more the next time. You see the right side of the track, how close I am to
Yeah,
it?
it is so fast.
And how late on that apex. You know, hold.
He also gave it more time before you turned into this.
Yeah, exactly. Essentially, you hold to the right here a little bit longer, so that you can open that up, because then you can be way quicker down here. And you see like my eyes are always, it's like nice and smooth. There's no choppy, like I'm looking at the curb, I'm looking through the exit, I'm looking up at the next. So like it's nice and smooth. Here I was trying to play with the braking. On the inside it's a bit too bumpy, but on the outside I feel like you're not able to get it consistently down to the apex.
When you say full throttle on that turn, do you mean that like you don't brake?
Here?
Yeah,
This turn?
on the previous turn.
No. This turn is the full throttle one.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, pretty much the only place that I like. So if you hear throttle wise, the difference between us through here I guess through both of the column switchbacks turns. So full throttle in this corner. But it's later turn into, if you notice, like what I'm doing versus what you're doing. So you probably turn in just a little bit earlier, and I'm turning in, and the cart's pretty much straight here now. Versus you're kind of turning in, coming out to there, and then having to turn around this curb, essentially. But you turn into the point so that this is your exit. And then the brake point ends up being right at the beginning of that yellow barrier. But you hear through this section, I don't lift off the throttle at all. Like I'm modulating it.
And so you're not braking at all?
No. But there's a bit of modulation. So like rolling into the throttle, little lifts, but still on the throttle, and then full throttle.
That's helpful.
And then same thing here. No lift really between the two is the goal. So you all your braking's done in that first one. Let me back it up a little bit. Yeah, so once you brake and get that's why you like turn in so late on the first one, is because all your braking for the section, you want to get here. All the slowing down done here into the first one, so you can just work on, essentially you're extending that payoff zone. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah, that's why you come so far out right here so quick.
Exactly. Yep. Okay. We can close that. Let's go to this one. And so like when we start getting more time, it'll be easier. Wrong card. Cool. So that's a little bit better, but now a little bit late.
Right.
Yeah. But first lap, so. But yeah, what I was saying is once we get a little bit more organized with stuff, we'll be able to do some review like during the day, which will be easy. It'll give us more opportunity to like make progress. Right now it's just been like big things that we're kind of chopping off, and now we're getting more into like the technical details of like how to drive the cart. So here you see now look at your hands, how much like
high.
Yeah, high, but also like you're essentially, we'll flip back to my video in a second, but like no, look at how you're like turning into the corner. So what we're looking at here is like hand movement, essentially. So maybe a little bit lower on the wheel here, which is nicer. I like that better. I don't know, still I feel like it's pointing down a lot. Yeah, that's better. The hand's there, I like that, that's good.
There's just something about G-Force for me, man, that just gets me so hyped. Jesus.
Ooh, early.
A little sloppy.
Yep.
All right, this is coming up on my one of my favorite laps.
That was good. Ooh.
That was a little squirrely.
Yep. He's from the curb.
What's this?
Oh. Let's see. You asked some questions.
So I grabbed the Micron.
What?
So I grabbed the charger for the Micron because I was like, I'm feeling good and I want to get a lap time.
Okay. So one of the things, just mentally to be thinking, or on the mental side, is like when you do have a corner that's like, oh, that felt good. It's real easy, like you were like, oh, I had a great corner, and then the next two you screwed up.
Yeah.
So it's being able to kind of like forget that, you know, and just be like, okay, focus right back into like what that next one looks like.
It's a moment when I did this.
No. Just like we heard you go woohoo, and then immediately like the next two turns, like these ones were bad. So keep that. I guess it's good. It's good to like acknowledge that, but you don't like a good turn that you did the turn before doesn't mean the next one's gonna be good.
Yeah.
Does that mean?
Yeah.
Eat goldfish.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think for me it's like it feels good whenever you get a turn that is constantly giving you trouble.
Sure.
You know, and then you're like, oh, that's what that feels like. That
Yep.
feels good. And that
So
one.
let's see. Not so bad, yeah. That was good. Yeah, for sure you can be using more of that outside.
On the right side going in.
Yeah, on the entry there. This is getting better. Sounds like you're braking for the second turn there too.
I am.
Yeah, so I think you're trying to go too much power for the first one. Just like roll into the throttle basically through that first. Like what we said, use like the brake here. And then just a little bit of throttle so that you can go full throttle earlier here. Yeah, I mean, you're starting to understand the line and like where to actually put the cart and everything a bit better. I'd say it's that eye placement is probably what we want to work on the next time. So like not getting stuck at the apexes.
Yeah.
'Cause when you get stuck, you get behind. And there, that's exactly what happened. You got to the apex. I moved it back too much. You got to the apex with your eyes, and then you got stuck there.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden you came up on the exit, and you're like, oh,
I'm like checking on like how close am I gonna actually be to the
Exactly,
apex versus,
yeah.
like thinking about
you got
next
stuck
time.
there, and then you're like, oh wait. So 54.2, which I think you got to the 53s.
What do you say? Where do you see 54.2?
It was right there. It goes right here.
Okay. Also, I have 840 written down as a good time, which we just skipped over.
That was it.
Was it?
Yeah.
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah, it was right here. 54.2. But I think you did a 53.8 or 53.6.
Oh no! I mean like 840 on the.
No, I know that was at like 8:15.
that's
8:40 isn't a lap on this
Okay.
one, so it may be a different. It's probably a different recording.
No, I'm talking about minute number. 8 minutes and 40 seconds.
Yes, I went there.
So we're on the same page.
Yes, we are.
Cool.
8 minute 40.
Yeah, like comparing this time with my turn at 6:50.
So you're 6/10 slower on this lap than your fastest.
Yeah.
So that's not a good lap. At 8 minutes and 40.
So I'm saying that just to compare that specific turn with
Got
at
it.
840 with my turn at 650, which was a good version versus a bad version.
I see.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's better. That's good. So what happens here? It's better with line. You still can open up that entry a little bit more, but you got to use the curb on the right hand side to do that. Which you do a little bit here. You just want to keep attached to it, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Because here you're still like, you end up going straight, and so you're making like kind of a box out of the turn a little bit. But yeah, that was good. I like that. Let's see. Comparison.
Like an early turn over adjustment.
So here, you're a bit further over to the left. You're turning in already. And then you have to open your hands back up early to the apex. And then slow on the way out.
Hands look better.
Hands are looking better, but the thing that's where your consistency is struggling a bit, I think, here, is the way you come around here and break. So you need to get in your mind a braking reference for yourself that you can consistently pick out. For me, it's like as I pass like the curb here.
You start braking.
Yeah. Yeah, maybe a little bit more. Oops. It's either here or the end of this barrier there. So like there.
And be closer to it.
And be kind of following it around, because you're just ending up a little bit tighter than you should. So that's what's giving you trouble there. These are looking much better. Nice. Hand placement on the wheel looks better here. I like that. I don't know if we talked about that at all. It just happened naturally. I'm curious to look at something. So like if we look, like that was a pretty good turn, I'd say. You kind of did that thing in the braking zone though, where you coasted into it.
Yeah,
you hear that?
Hear it. Yeah.
But overall, like going through the corner, the power like down and everything, it's pretty good. That's pretty good. This is a good lap, I think. Yeah, 53.75. There we go. I think that was your quickest one in this session. But look, 0.3 quicker just in that section there, and than that last lap.
Oh wow!
So there's 0.3. So there's 0.3 in that like just in those two turns, in your own driving. So what we look at with like we'll break the track into like sectors for car racing stuff, even in kart racing. So like we look at like what your best driving lap is. That would be best rolling lap, and then there's a theoretical lap, which is like your best turn. But we want to achieve our best rolling lap essentially, or our best rolling lap. I think I mixed that up a little bit.
So if you were to piece together all of your best sections of each sector,
yeah,
that would be your theoretical best lap.
Theoretical best lap.
Through this section, my best time with those 0.3.
Exactly.
And then my best time for the next section.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
And so like the theoretical, you want to get within like, and it depends on how many, the more sectors you create, the more like time there is.
Yeah. But
sometimes it's not achievable because you may be able to go through like the first turn in that double, in a switchback quicker. And if you break it in between the two, it doesn't make sense to break
like
it
thinking
there.
About like the payoff zone.
Well, yeah, you want to just do it in a place where it's like a contained group. And then the best rolling lap is like your best point to point lap essentially. So it's like your best, say if your sector 1 was really good, but 2 and 3 weren't good on that lap, they were good before the lap before, it would count like all those together. That's like the best lap that you physically drove on the track. Does that make sense? Yeah. So we look at that a bit later, and when we dive a bit more into the aim data, we can do that. That's the micron. But that's my point in like the consistency thing. Okay, so that was probably your best through there. Yeah.
Why?
You tell me.
I mean, it looked like I knew what I was doing.
You tell me what you. I think it's a good.
We're further to the outside on the turn in.
Yep.
Which widens the turn, allows us to keep a higher speed, RPM to the corner, and track out.
Yep. And the did I go too far now? Power's good. Apex good. Maybe a little bit too much slide after the apex, because that's why it kind of went and grabbed. But you could have opened the hands up even a little bit more and used a little bit more of the track. That would have helped there. So, but overall, I think that was one of your best runs through that turn. There, this is what I'm talking about, where you're getting too aggressive with your hands.
Where I'm just like cutting it.
Yeah, like watch. You see that?
Mm-hmm.
You're like trying to like get the cart to slide essentially before you're going in.
But there's the woohoo.
Yeah.
It's specifically that turn. It, for whatever reason, like really raises my adrenaline or spikes my dopamine levels to where I get like a almost high sensation.
That was really good too. So 53.65. There you go. And there was still, so there was 3 tenths there, but you lost a couple of tenths in. You lost a couple of tenths here.
That was my last chance.
Yeah. Nice. So your last lap was the quickest.
Yeah.
That's awesome. All right. I think we looked. Some of the best. Holy shit. Let's see what we still got. Nice.
Holy shit.
So I ran a 50.0. That's what I think I have the picture on my phone, but I ran a 50.0. So you were like 3.5 seconds basically off the time that I ran. So closer in time, because last time it was like a 54.5, I think you ran something around there. And I ran a 48.6. So we picked up essentially another second to myself, second and a half basically to myself, because you went a second quicker and I went a second and a half slower, basically. So that's essentially like what you said, the track conditions changing, which is affecting like what the grip level is and the speed that you can carry through the turns and tire wear and all that stuff. We didn't change tires, the same tires that we went on the last time, and all those components of it.
Yeah. And I looked at this footage briefly before today just to like get some reference points out to talk about today.
Sure.
And I played track day 1.
Yep.
First round.
Yeah, we can pull that up.
Simultaneously next to track day 2.
Oh shit.
Even like, I think I went probably like 4 laps deep and just looked to see how much further I would get ahead of myself.
Yeah.
And, by lap 4, I was like 40 seconds.
Yeah. Oh yeah, for sure.
So, I mean, talking about what the cutoff is, whenever we discussed that on, the interview day 1, which was like the 10% rule.
Yep.
Like that is a precise example of like, if you're over 10% slower than the fastest person, then they're going to be on your butt in like the first 7 laps.
Yeah. So like if you think about this track, 10% is like so like 4.85 seconds.
Yeah.
So it's like 48, 50.
Right.
So it's 10% of whatever the quickest lap is. Mm-hmm. So now you're like under that. You're now more like 6%, 7%, somewhere in that area. So like a good, reasonable spot to be in. So I think we're making progress. You know, the goal is to be, I'd say for racing to be competitive. Like you could go run a race, right? But then you're just going to get lapped. It's right. And so the goal is basically the first goal when you get to your first race is to keep the car or cart on track and not get lapped. Those are like the first goals that you start with. And then from there, you build from there.
Don't suck.
Yeah. Don't suck. Don't suck. This is but I wanted to point out, we'll just let it run through, like the difference in our hands.
Yeah.
So not the placement necessarily, but you see how like my aggressive steer is like as the cart's already sliding, I'm like pointing it down to the apex. Does that make sense? So it's like I'm barely turning the wheel. If anything, it's turning more outward than it's turning in.
Right.
And then like you essentially those quick movements that I'm doing are to counteract the slide, get the cart back underneath, and then turn back into the corner.
Yeah, they're after the slide begins.
Exactly.
To get the cart.
Exactly. Because like essentially what you're doing, what I was describing is as you're coming into the corner, say up here, like we're already kind of bending the cart into the left just a little bit, and as you're turning it in, the rear loses traction and starts to slide around you. So like think about, you know, grip level, right? To get more technical with it, there's a limit of grip, right, that the tire has, and as you go into sliding, that the amount of friction that the tire creates is lower.
Yeah.
Yeah. So when it's lower, when there's less friction, it's going to go faster than the front tire. So that's what creates the slide. So that's why, like with the go-kart, with the rear brakes only in like the tag carts, the shifters are a bit different because they have front and rear brakes. But in the tag carts, you use the rear brake to like kind of begin that slide a little bit into the corner. And so but what I'm doing with my hands is keeping it like right on that limit. So it's sliding, but it's like right on the limit. So when I get to the apex, it's done sliding.
Yeah, you're riding it out.
Exactly. And so the nice thing again with the cart is like what you're doing is you're just basically putting the cart on that, like sliding it basically on the way in, and then when you're turning down to the apex, you're just on the limit of grip the whole time. So like you're just with your hands, you're essentially on the knife edge of like in a slide. That's what you're doing with your hands to like prevent it from going around.
Definitely couldn't have told me that before last week.
No.
It wouldn't have made any sense.
No, exactly. But you can see, like, that's why I wanted to show the difference in the hands, right? So hands are basically just controlling the slide as you come into the corner to keep the cart right on that limit. Make sense?
Yeah.
Cool. So like it's not sliding a ton after the apex. The slide really happens, especially like these shorter corners on the way in, and then nice and smooth the way out. Cool. All right, yeah, let's throw up. Now, so let's go back to this one, I think this one was your quickest. So we'll run that through real quick. Your quickest lap, which is right there at the end.
Is it 10-ish?
I think it's this lap here right now. Yeah, it's this lap. Pretty sure.
Mm-hmm.
Back it up. Cool. So we're coming to it now.
Okay.
You're getting it, right? Just keeping it right on the limit there. So 53.7, and I think this one's a little bit a tenth quicker. What we're looking for in the hands as well is you see how much more aggressive your inputs are in like the entry phase, like I guess the turn in. I don't know how to describe it, but things just look like in general like more choppy. And so what we're trying to do is like smooth out. Like it is quick and like on the limit, but we're trying to like refine it a little bit more. So that's essentially what we're looking for with like the steering and the head movement. But that's like at the very beginning I kind of described like the placement of the eyes. You can see it just in the way that like the camera's going, right? Like in my head it's like a pretty stable motion, and then your head is kind of like all over the place. So like part of that is just like neck muscle. Yeah. But the other part of it is like eye like placement and like being precise with where I'm looking. So in some places you're pretty good, but in other places it's kind of like not as good. Make sense? Mm-hmm. All right. So we saw that. Let's go. I think no, not that. This.
It's also a little unfortunate that it's like a different angle.
Oh yeah.
You know, because you can't fully like tell.
Sure.
But the
side by side,
the helmet view definitely helps a lot. Yeah. Like the top of the helmet view definitely helps a lot more with like figuring out what's going on.
I feel like this stuff's in slow motion. Close that. Oh, let's just open it like normal. There we go.
I think this is the second GoPro, not the first one.
Oh, okay.
So it's gonna be choppier for whatever reason.
That's the Hero 7. It doesn't have as good an image stabilization.
Yeah. So the first one, if you go, try that one.
Oh, okay. That's probably why it was going slow motion style.
Yeah. Are you able to open up two different windows?
I was trying, but if I open up another one, it'll just shut this one off.
Oh, okay.
Minute and 2.
With higher grip too.
Yeah.
I mean, you can. It's such low RPMs.
You see the difference, obviously.
I can hear it. I mean, if you were to play these clips for me without any sort of visual, I would be like, I could absolutely tell which one was me.
The other thing that's interesting, like line wise, I feel like the lines are pretty good. You know, like we're looking at some things, not here necessarily, but we talked about that. But like you're increasing the speed, and as you increase the speed, obviously the like how you get the cart, you know, like you're like oh, I'm missing the apex, you know. Before you're just like, I'm just driving around the track. So now you're getting the things where it's like we're talking about like, okay, you've got to get the cart down to the apex, and you got to make sure that you're placing it here or a late apex and all those things, and like all that's clicking, which is nice because sometimes it takes a long time. So that's like a good thing, I guess. Coaching wise, it makes it easy to work with, you know, so that you understand all those pieces. But also why it's important to use like the sim and other things to like augment the driving that you do in real life, because you can really like learn a lot of stuff from those things. So
yeah, I think one thing that really helps, you know, too much positive reinforcement is not a good thing, but you did say one thing on the last track day, and that was that there was a difference between the first track day and the second track day, and that was that I went from riding it to looking and sounding probably more like I was driving it.
Yeah.
What does that mean?
Yeah, a lot of people going to like drive go-karts, or I think the better term is ride. They'll say, let's go ride go-karts, you know, let's go ride rental go-karts at some place. And when you're like riding around the track, you're basically just kind of like accelerating the cart, but not really in like full control of it. Does that make sense? And so you're essentially just like, oh, I'm going to go as fast as I can on the straightaway and then just do whatever with the turn. When you're actually like driving the cart, you kind of force it to do what you want it to do. So that's what like the hand, essentially pushing your hands into the wheel and forcing the chassis. So you're essentially becoming more like a part of the cart, and you're actually forcing it to do the things that you want it to, rather than just kind of riding it around a track. So that's the difference that I see between those two pieces.
Yeah, it definitely felt like that.
Sure.
Too. Like this track session was so much more fun.
Yeah.
Like so much more fun.
Sure.
Because I was able to actually, feel like, the moments where I'm like giddy, woo, like that was me having a moment of realization where I'm like, oh, there was a little bit of a click there.
Yeah.
And like those moments, I think, are really the best part about learning something new, because it's in those small moments added up that you go from feeling like a complete newbie, rookie, to it slowly turning into something that is just instinctual or second nature.
Sure.
And like, that's why I really like to, I'm not going to celebrate every good turn, but whenever I've had continual trouble with like, that turn sucks, I'm just bad at right turns. And then I get that right turn down. I'm like, oh.
Yeah.
And so that's what feels so good about learning something new for me, is like whenever there's those like micro moments of like, oh, that's starting to click.
Sure.
And I can feel that.
Sure.
So.
Yeah. And definitely you can see it just in like comparing those two videos that we watched, going back to like the ride versus drive. Like, okay, you were in the right place on the track and everything, but you weren't really like forcing the cart to its limit. And so like, that's kind of the difference that we're looking for too. So remember we asked like, okay, what would an A look like on that first day? It's more what we did this time, right? There are a couple, you spun out a couple of times, not necessarily like right when you were on the limit, but you were pushing the limit and yourself with the limit of it more, and getting the cart more consistently like into the places that you wanted to. And even if you didn't just kind of get stuck there, you went back and you were able to change the way that you approach to the turn to maybe change, the outcome and actually make improvement, like what you said, and make it click.
Right.
Yeah.
So what would you rate that track day?
Yeah, I think an A would be a good.
That's a great rating.
Yeah.
That's a great rating. And that being considered, the mind of a goldfish, moving forward to track day 3.
Yeah.
What would you like to,
I'd say to look back, this is where we're coming back to one of my points earlier. I would grade like the track day stuff an A, but the preparation probably a C. Because we had one time, which I know you were sick and everything, but a lot of like the driving stuff, as we talked about at the track and leaving the track, dropping you back off, is going to become on you, right? And so like you've got to take the initiative to go and get like, I can't always be there because I travel and do the stuff, or I have other stuff going on. Like I can't always be there to guide you to the practice that you need to be doing, right, or in addition. So I think that would be looking towards the next one. It's getting, more time with the sim and taking care of all the stuff that you need to take care of to make sure that when you're there and ready to go. And so it's like the preparation side of it is important as well, so that when we're there, we can just focus on the driving. So, that's, for me, it's been getting more tools and getting the things that I need to do. For you, it's reviewing video and reviewing the points that you want to be focusing on for the next time and coming in like basically ready to go. And so there's a little bit of that I, can support you with, but some of it, you've got to be able to do on your own. And so the nice thing for me to see as well was, okay, what's, you're planning out the next time with me, and I'm not having to chase you with it either. So that was one of the things too, coming out of this. I'm like, okay, well, I've got stuff going on. So if there's no, like, I'm not going to chase you to do this, essentially, like you've got to put the effort in as well to match to match it.
Okay.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
So I'm not going to chase you down to like say, oh, you need to be on the sim and you need to do this. Cause like there's other stuff I can do as well, but it's right, like, you've got to be able to schedule it in with what's going on for your side. So okay, that's like the preparation side, I'd say. But the at track stuff has all been, good. And this session was another step.
Okay. What else? Like ideally moving into next track session, I've gotten, at least minimum of one sim per week.
Yeah.
And then also have the points of like, what are we working on this time?
Mm-hmm.
Like what do I feel like I should focus on in the cart today?
Yeah, so that's like what we were just talking about. Yeah. So the eyes, your eye placement and smoothing out the way that you're going. So I think reviewing like my video for references on the track for like breaking points and like the sound differences between the two. So you can look and see, okay, like how I'm braking and like the difference between full throttle brake and then full throttle coast brake. So just noting those things, those would be the two biggest things I think that we need to work on. And then with that, your reference points and your eye movement and awareness is going to help with widening the entries to those turns that we talked about as well. Those would be the next places, like specific places on the track to focus on. But the technique is going to be coming from like eye placement where you're looking on the track and that braking difference.
Cool. Nice. Well, let's see. Think I've covered everything else that I took notes on.
Sweet.
Yeah, the takeaways from that specific day were decreasing the latency in throttle and brake, and then steering into slide, not steering into slide, but braking into slide.
Yeah.
And
I think there's still a little bit that could be worked on there.
Yeah.
Which it's not easy. The braking is the hardest part.
Yeah. So, any final words for our podcast?
Yeah, one thing that was interesting that I liked today thinking about is like with the cart, how I was describing that it's kind of always on a knife edge or on a limit of grip. And the goal is to have the cart be on the limit of grip or over the limit to begin with to help the rotation into the corner. But then once you get it to rotate, you're essentially using your hands to keep the cart like right under the limit of grip. So you can just worry about the power down. So that's where like on the entry, if you look at what I'm doing, I get the cart rotated and then I'm using my hands to keep it under me and the power down happens nice and smooth and there's no like bogging at the exit. So when there's
sudden grip where it burns.
Exactly. Yeah. So you're just a little bit over the limit. You bring it back under nice and controlled and then smooth with the power down and the exit.
Awesome.
So that's like one of the most important things from learning from the karting is how to get it to rotate into the corner, how to get a vehicle to rotate into a turn. And understanding that limit, bringing it over and not doing it too much that it all of a sudden catches grip there. It grips up aggressively. So it's kind of that nice transition of bringing it past the limit and then back.
Okay. Yeah. And then just trying not to think about everything all at once.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah,
cheering yourself on is good.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Okay.
Sweet.
Well, thank you for watching. If you've watched all of this, we have more for you coming.
Yes.
And, recommendations. Alec's a great coach. He's got like a good balance of, this is A driving, but we're going to, keep you from getting, too high on that. So we're going to give you like a C for preparation. So more things to work on, of course, always. And that's the exciting part about the process. So
totally. Yeah, I think a lot of the driving aspect, comes down to like any other sport. The effort that you put into it's what you get out of it. But there's fewer opportunities to get on racetracks than there are to like kick a soccer ball around or shoot basketball. So you got to make the most of the ones that you get.
Yeah, and the sim is also really fun. It's quite the shit show whenever you get back on it for the first time in a while too. You just like slam straight into the wall.
Yeah.
But yeah, excited to get back in that. So we'll talk more about that after this as well.
Sure. All right.